one of the ways you can connect to the internet, and you probably have what's called an internet service provider, or ISP. And they're the people that run a cable or a wire to your home, and they give you the ability to connect to the internet using a device called a router that sits in your home that sends out a Wi-Fi signal that your computers and cellular devices and other devices can connect to. And they also have the ability for you to use Ethernet cables if you're interested in using Ethernet cables to connect as well. There's also cellular services that provide an internet connection. Cellular services give you the capability to connect to a cell tower from your cell phone if you are not on a Wi-Fi network. Our smartphones have both Wi-Fi antennas and cellular antennas built in, and the cellular antenna connects to the cellular service that you purchase your cellular connection from. And so those are the two ways people typically connect to the internet, either at home or a hotel or a coffee shop through Wi-Fi. And when there's not Wi-Fi available, through their cellular service that they have on their mobile device. Now, there's two sides of internet speed. There's the download speed and there's the upload speed. In general, as consumers, we get much faster download speeds than we do upload. And download's what's really important because that's what brings things from the internet to us. It would bring streaming services like Netflix. It what refreshes our screen. It what makes Zoom possible. And so the download speed is more important than the upload. And the upload speed will typically be a fraction of what the download speed is, but it's more than adequate for sending emails, connecting to Zoom and other video conferencing features, and uploading the files to your cloud storage service. So, but there are two differences, what you bring down from the internet to you and what you send up to the internet. And your bandwidth and internet speed is measured both as download and upload separately because of that. So a megabit is an important number to know. It's 1,000,000 bits of data. And a bit of data is either a 0 or a 1. Okay, and it depends on if it's a 0, it's a 0 bit. If it's a 1, it's a 1 bit. And the bit can be either a 0 or the 1. And every piece of digital information we work with exists in digits of zeros and one. It's called binary language. Now, when you have 1,000 of these, you've got 1,000 bits of data with a megabyte. A byte is a word that is made up of several zeros and ones. So, for example, in 8 digits, 8 places in a byte would be 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and the ones and zeros can interchange. But that is an 8-bit byte. Okay, so that's generally what people refer to when they're referring to megabytes. But when we deal with bandwidth, it's easier to measure it, and your measurements typically take place in bits. I came up with a couple of charts and graphics to help us out here. Bandwidth is sometimes measured in megabytes and megabits, so you just have to be careful which way it's measured. And it'll tell you how fast everything is moving across the connection that you have. So that's what bandwidth means. It's your speed in megabits per second or megabytes per second. It could be measured either way. Okay, so what happens? What we're talking about is how do we move a file like we want to send an email? Or how do we move a file like we want to upload a document to the cloud? Or how do we send a photo to somebody else? Or how do we listen to a song on a streaming service on the internet? Or how do we watch a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or Disney Plus video? Those are the things that really mean something to us, and it helps to know how big some of these things are. So I made a not to scale chart. So it's not to scale, it's just relative. So a text message is typically 140 bytes. It's really small. So each character, like an A, a B, a C, a D, has a 8 bytes, an 8-bit word to it to tell you how big it is. And so text messages are really, really small. In the old days, when there were companies like RIM and others that allowed you to send messages, and we had cell phones that were flip phones that had a 10-digit keypad, we could send and receive text messages because they didn't use up much data. And most text messages actually were transmitted over the cellular network without going over the internet. So that's how big a text message. It was really, really easy to send them, and people started communicating back and forth, particularly wirelessly. Now, a lot of people had internet connections in their home, and they would do things like email. And so email gave people the capability to do things. And an average email is about 75 kilobytes, which means 1,000 bytes. So if a byte is 8 bits, it's about 75,000 bytes times 8. It's a little bit bigger than than a text message, but not much bigger. Okay, emails and that's without a photo or attachment of any file. That's just the text in an email. So email didn't require a lot of capacity to send and receive things back and forth over the internet, because what we're doing is we're talking about sending a file that has a certain size to it over whatever wires or wireless connection we have, and then it gets to the person that receives it, and they send a file back to us. That's what an email is, or a text message. It's actually a file of data. Now, again, not to scale, but a smartphone photo can be anywhere from 2 to 5 megabytes. That can be really big. And so there was once upon a time messages that would show up on websites that said, do you want to use this website with photos, or do you want to use it without photos? And it'll go a lot faster. So photos were larger files, and they keep on getting bigger and bigger as the resolution of our smartphone cameras get bigger. But Apple and Google and other companies have created tools that compress that file, which makes it easier. And the average photo is typically about 2 to 5 megabytes. Now, all of these things also are using up storage on your computer, but your computer's got gigabytes of storage, and your cloud service might have gigabytes of storage. And so these things still will fit pretty easily. A song is about 6 megabytes. Last I checked, the average iTunes song is about 6 megabytes. So it's a little bit bigger than a photo, but sometimes a photo can be bigger. But these are pretty good size files that require a little bit faster. So when the internet was really slow, we could send and receive emails, we could visit web pages that were mostly text. But as it got faster, we could start to view web pages with photos. We could start to send and receive photos from our smartphones and internet connections at home. And we could start to stream music as well. That's one reason why Apple started out with iTunes, and iTunes made a lot of sense because it was really, really possible to download songs at a point where the internet and the connections got faster. Now, the one thing you don't see on here is because it wouldn't fit. So I had to create another slide. I have a typo here, I see. A 1-hour video is 1 to 1.5 gigabytes. It is so big that it takes a lot more space. It takes a lot longer. And so streaming services really became popular. I mean, remember at one point, Netflix would rent you a DVD and they'd mail it to you. You couldn't fit a movie and ship it over the internet for people to watch. Now you can. And so that's kind of an understanding of relative file sizes. Now, what do you need? Well, if you look at YouTube and Netflix and Amazon Prime, they will work with about 1 megabits per second speed. So if your bandwidth is 1 megabit per second, you'll get it. But sometimes you might get that spinning dial, and that tells you the download is buffering. That means it's waiting for more information to download from the internet before it can display it on your screen. But some people like to have 4K, okay, which is standard high definition is not 4K, but 4K is what a lot of videos are done in, and that needs about 4 to 5 megabits per second. Most of us probably have internet connections that meet this requirement, but I'm going to show you how you can test your internet connection and see how much bandwidth you've really got. There's another factor that's important for some people more than others. It's called latency. And latency means how much is there a delay between what are called hops on the internet. And they're called hops because rabbits hop. That's how it got its name. But on the internet, we have a connection at home that's our router. Our router connects to our internet service provider's router. Their router connects to the internet, and there are many other routers between ourselves and the ultimate connection that you might end up getting to on the internet. And these are called hops. So latency is the time it takes for our message to go from us to the next hop, to the next hop, to the next hop. And all of them added together will give you a latency number based on how fast your internet connection is. So there can be fast, but you can also be quick between hops as well. So it can get a lot of bandwidth there, but it also can move a lot of traffic pretty fast as well. So it's just a factor. It affects gamers more than it affects anybody else. If you're doing online gaming, you need a really fast response time so that not only can you send the data, but the data moves really, really quickly between points on the internet so that you're playing the game and everybody's playing the game at the same time. It's something that keep in mind because you might see a number that tells you, oh, your latency is so many milliseconds, which is really, really fast. We're going to take a look at some speed tests when I bring up my browser, but Ookla is a common one that's used, but you also have SpeedSmart, SpeedCheck, your ISP, your cable provider, your cellular provider might have a speed test. Now, if you're having a problem with your internet connection, what they usually want you to do is they want you to actually connect your computer to your router at home with a cable. They don't want to rely on Wi-Fi to judge how fast your performance is going. But for the most part, our speeds are pretty good, and you'll find that even over Wi-Fi, our speeds generally are going. But if you have a problem, it's always a good way to know what you're checking out with your speed test. Okay, so let me close my screen sharing here and go over to take a few questions while we've got them. Anybody have any questions so far about what we're doing?
I would add two things, Bob. First is I found that using a Wi-Fi analyzer with my cell phone, it helps to find out if your neighbor is also on the same channel, because that a lot of times will affect your speed. And the other thing is I've just always used fast.com. It's very easy and gives you latency, speed, everything else. So it's a good one as well.
There's a lot of good ones out there. Thanks, CG. And you probably have an Android phone, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. What EG is talking about is there are tools, apps that will help analyze your Wi-Fi network, but they are not available for iPhones. They will only download to Android phones. So what it does is it gives you the ability to actually go around a location and see how strong a signal is, see if there's interference from other Wi-Fi networks, because interference can affect the quality and the speed of the connection, because we're talking about sending things over radio waves from one point to another. And if there's interference, the radio waves are not going to carry the data as well as we want them to. That happens with any wireless connection. Now, with cellular connections, we depend on the cellular provider and the towers that they provide. So sometimes if you're in an area where you have a weak signal for your cellular connection, you may discover that your bandwidth doesn't function as well because you don't have as strong a signal that can handle as much bandwidth. For the most part, the technology has gotten a lot better over the years, and things generally work well for the most part. Okay. I'm going to share some pictures with you here. Let me get my screen. Yeah, Kathleen?
Yes. My Wi-Fi, I get other neighbors' Wi-Fi, like connected to a television and that sort of thing. What does that mean as far as their connection to my Wi-Fi?
Well, generally it doesn't affect you because most routers that create Wi-Fi signals will automatically switch what's called a channel, which is a variation of the frequency. It's like tuning into channel 4 or 7. Similar, not exactly the same. But if you have two Wi-Fi networks that are on the same channel, sometimes they can interfere with each other. But wireless communications is much more complicated to diagnose and solve problems with because it's happening wirelessly. But in general, if you see a Wi-Fi network from your neighbor, it's just because they have a router with an antenna that's broadcasting in a range that overlaps your location. So you see it commonly in hotels and in apartment buildings and condominiums and areas like that, where sometimes their signal will overlap yours. But if you don't have their username and password, you can't get on their network, just like if they don't have yours, they can't get on your network.
I'm on the second floor in one building, and they're on the third floor in the next building over.
For Kathleen, one option she might have is she needs to know if she's on the 2.4 megahertz or the 5 megahertz, because the routers the current routers have two different channels themselves, and the higher speed is usually at the 5 megahertz, and sometimes just moving to the different megahertz will make a difference.
Yep. Routers have there's an international standard for Wi-Fi that's run in the United States. The standards body is the International Electrical and Engineering Organization. I don't remember the acronym, what full stands for, but I have it on an article on my website. And they set an industry standard for Wi-Fi. At one time, Wi-Fi worked on a specific radio frequency of 2.4 gigahertz. And that's the only way you could use Wi-Fi. But a couple of other things around our homes also use 2.4 gigahertz. A microwave oven, for example, creates a signal that overlaps with 2.4 gigahertz. So some people would discover that if they were close to their microwave with their smartphone, they weren't getting as good a signal or reception or transmission back and forth. There were, and there may still be, some older style wireless phones that people would use, wireless handsets in their home, where the home had a base station and it had a wireless module that you could take around your home. Those also operated on 2.4 megahertz. So the Wi-Fi standard body said, let's try and get another frequency. And in the United States, the Federal Communications Commission controls the frequencies that can be used. They said, let's get a 5 gigahertz frequency, and let's use that for Wi-Fi. So then they could make routers that broadcast both on 2.4 and on 5. Now the 5 gigahertz your router is broadcasting on and receiving on does nothing to do with the 5G cellular internet. They're different. They're different techno. Cellular is an entirely different type of network, and our phones have cellular and Wi-Fi antennas. Your laptop may only have a Wi-Fi. Usually laptops don't come with cellular, and iPads can be purchased either way. They can be purchased with just Wi-Fi or with Wi-Fi and cellular. So cellular gives you the ability to connect to cellular networks. So if your Wi-Fi goes down, you're not totally locked out of the internet. You may still have a cellular connection available. This is a company called Telegeography for people that really, really, really like networks. They're great to look at. They show you the submarine cables that go all around the world from point A to point B. And so you can see that the globe is connected, and this is cables that connect various parts of the world to each other. Most of the internet runs underwater. A little bit when we get to the shores of the continents, typically landlines running. Sometimes there's some wireless communications, but these are all individual cables that are owned and operated by a wide range of companies. And I found this great little internet exchange map. When I ran an internet service provider, I was very fortunate that I got to go to an internet exchange building and get access to one. Anybody that's worked in information technology probably has seen a data center, but these internet exchanges are where different internets from different companies come together. At one point in the United States, the internet was owned by the federal government, and then it got privatized. And so a couple of large telecommunications companies took over the cabling and what are called these interchange points, because Yahoo, for example, is not connected directly to our home internet service provider. Yahoo may not be connected to Rogers Communications. They may not be connected to Verizon or T-Mobile. So for T-Mobile or your local ISP or Rogers to get you from your home to Yahoo, they have to connect to a network exchange point where those networks connect to each other. And so the world is filled with these buildings that are solely serve the purpose of connecting different internet networks together. And they're all over the world. And so we can zoom in here on the United States and Canada and take a look at where they might be located. As you'd expect, in certain areas like Toronto, there are more internet exchanges. And these are buildings that have internet locations. So here's, some of you may know where Mark 550 Cochrane Avenue in Markham is located. That's an exchange point. And they run an exchange for connecting different internet connections. Another one in Markham. I'm not sure why Markham has a few. Typically there are a lot of them in downtown locations because they were built. You can see these are all the exchanges that you see that are here to connect. And these companies make money by connecting and charging a small fee for connecting one network to another network, but they create an exchange where all the data can go back and forth. So I thought that was kind of an interesting map if you haven't seen it. Yeah, Kathleen.
Are all the colors indicate different companies?
The color, well, in this case, they're all black. You mean the colors on the cable map indicate different cables, try and differentiating them from each other. So you can see there's just a lot of cables here going between, the Northeast and Europe, but they're different, companies. And here, the inter-exchange map, they're just all indicated with dots, but these exchanges indicate what the different exchange companies that are operating in that building location. I know the cable map does, but let's see if I click on this. Now it's just going to show exchanges here. And you can see obviously the San Jose area, as you would expect, has a lot of exchanges. The Los Angeles area has exchanges. A lot of times we're the point where if you're going from Toronto, New York to get to a website or send an email to somebody in Japan or Asia, you'd go through one of the exchanges on the West Coast. So, and these are big buildings that have stacks and stacks, big devices and routers. Companies like Cisco make a lot of this equipment that connects all of us together in one way or another. but the company is called Telegeography. You can actually purchase maps for your wall if you're interested in doing that, and get maps that show different different exchange points all over the world. But as I mentioned, companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft run their own private networks and that they're not even on here. But for them to connect to the rest of the internet, they would have to connect to an exchange point at some point. We'll do this on my computer and we'll do it on my smartphone just to get a comparison. I just use speed tests. There happen to be what Spectrum, my local internet service, provides. You can go to speedtest.com, and what you'll see is that ads. Don't click on the ads unless you want to get taken to an ad, but you'll see a big go button in here. They collect a lot of information. They've got an app that works on Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, in Chrome, on Apple TV, and as a text prompt as well. So I'm going to just click go. All I have to do is click on go. And when I click on go, it's going to start connecting, and it's going to give me a download speed in megabits per second and an upload speed in megabits per second. And it's going to give me a ping, which helps me measure latency. The ping is how far apart I am from a connection. So I'm getting 541 megabits per second on my download. My upload is about just under 20. I don't know if it'll get to 20 and stay there or not, because it averages out the time you're going here at 21.88. So you can get Speed Test as an app for Mac. We'll take a look at it. So this is telling me how fast I can get to an internet connection point in Los Angeles from my home. And this is more than adequate. You can see, I mean, I only needed 5 megabits per second for internet streaming in 4K. So my streaming services all work well, but I'm the only one using the internet in my home. If, for example, you have 2 people that are using the internet at the same time, this bandwidth will be split between them, and they might not get all of the bandwidth at one time. Now, we're not always using bandwidth. We're only using bandwidth when we are actually uploading or downloading files. So if you're not sending any email, if your computer's just sitting idle, you're just, relaxing and reading a book, you're not really using very much bandwidth. Your computer might go out and pull in emails once in a while, but you're not using your cloud, you're not, uploading photos, you're not watching anything streaming. So those aren't really you're not really using a lot of your bandwidth during that time. So if you did have somebody else using it, they'd have access to almost all of it. Now, this download and upload speed are not guaranteed by the prices we pay for home internet connections. They are basically maximums. You can get up to, so many megabits per second, or up to upload so many megabits per second. But sometimes you may find that it's going to be slower than what says you're paying for, because if you look at the fine print on your bill, it'll say you can get up to a certain number of megabits per second. And that's really what you're paying as capacity. Many internet companies for businesses, they will sell a guaranteed capacity, but you pay a lot more for that. So let me stop sharing. Any questions about have any of you run speed tests?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's your provider, Bob?
I use Spectrum, Fred.
Okay. And what speed do you pay for?
I don't know. I think I'm paying for, I'm not sure what my speed is that I'm paying for, but I think it's the second upgrade level, because it gives me higher upload speeds. Because I do so many Zoom meetings, I wanted to make sure that I had good upload speeds, because that's a little more important on Zoom. I don't need the 20 megabits per second for Zoom. Only about, 3 or 4 would be more than adequate. But I just wanted to make sure I had extra capacity. Yeah, EG, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you asked if anyone does speed tests. I do them fairly regularly. And we were having some problems with our Spectrum line, and we did frequent speed tests. And then when we called Spectrum for customer service, we fed them that information, and we got really good results because we gave them information that showed how poor their performance was, and they came out and actually rewired. So
I've had them do it, not at my current location, but in a prior home where I had Spectrum. They actually came out and do that. Yeah, so that's something that if you're not sure if you're getting the right speed, and usually what happens is that people do a speed test or start to figure they've got issues because they're trying to diagnose a problem. Something's not working right. They notice things are slow because where your internet connection is slow could be your internet service provider, but it also could be an issue with sometimes as simple as a cable or your Wi-Fi signal. But the great thing about most internet service providers that run cable to our homes is they do offer service calls if you've got problems, and being able to give them a little bit of diagnostic information is really helpful. Okay, I'm going to try and switch over to my phone here. So I'm currently on my home Wi-Fi network, the same network as my Mac, but I'm on my phone. So if I go to speed test, because it's better to compare one test service to another, and I tap go, it'll go out and it'll connect, and it'll check and see what my downloads are and what my uploads are here. They may not be exactly the same, okay, because I have a different, a wire antenna on my phone than I do on my laptop. So sometimes you'll see slightly different results. But I'm still getting really good download speeds here at 264 megabits per second. And my upload speeds are a little bit slower, which I would expect, but they're still pretty good just for my phone. So another way to get some information. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually shut off my Wi-Fi connection. I'm going to tap the Wi-Fi button in my center, and it's going to turn off Wi-Fi. So now my internet connection is based on my cellular connection. So if I tap on speed tests and tap go, it's going to give me the connection I'm getting over my cellular network connection, which should be different, usually slower, but sometimes it can be fast as well. So we're getting a pretty good test here.
Could be picking up 5G cellular.
Sometimes we're getting 5G in the neighborhood, yes. And so 5G cellular is among the fastest. You can see it saying Spectrum 5G. I also go with Spectrum, my cellular connection. Upload's a little bit slower, but there's a type of 5G called 5G ultra wide, which is the fastest 5G. Now, this is a pretty good connection, and I really don't need much more than that. So what's happening now is you're seeing Verizon and T-Mobile offering 5G internet connections, where instead of getting a wired connection from an internet service provider to your home, you could actually get a 5G wireless box that connects and creates a Wi-Fi network in your home. It's a cellular hotspot. It connects out to the internet using the cellular connection as opposed to using Wi-Fi. So you don't necessarily, now from what I've seen them doing, they're charging about a flat rate of about $50 a month for that. So if I turn on my Wi-Fi again here and I connect to my Wi-Fi network and I do a speed test one more time, let's see what kind of results I get here, okay? See if it's much different. It probably won't be, but my cellular connection's pretty good where I am. But sometimes I'll just have an area where I'm really getting a slow cellular connection, and you can see it's really pretty comparable what I'm getting with Wi-Fi. Now, when I'm using Wi-Fi on my phone, I'm not using my cellular data on my phone. So when I just use cellular to access the internet, say I'm away from my home and not near my Wi-Fi network, I am using my cellular data on my phone. But when I'm on Wi-Fi, I'm using the Wi-Fi connection and connectivity. So it's more important for people that do roaming than for people that are home and in their neighborhood, because cellular service is pretty consistent in country, but as soon as you cross the border into another country, you're going to pay international roaming rates for it.
I found out that LA County Library has cellular hotspots you can check out to up to 5 or 6 weeks, which I thought's pretty cool.
I'm going to Spain in May, and the hotel that I booked in Madrid, because I wanted to spend some time there, they say if you book directly with them, they will give you a cellular hotspot that you can use during your stay.
Cool.
So that if you go out of the hotel, you don't have to use your cellular roaming data. You can use their hotspot to get out to the internet.
Cool.
That's cool. Yeah, Kathleen.
I don't know how the basic procedures for testing your speed on your phone. What do you do?
Okay, so the first thing you would need to do is to download an app. Okay. And the app that I used was Speed Test.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, and once you download the app and you open up the app, it will typically, the home screen will show you a big circle go to do that. And you can check and see like common areas. If you go out for coffee, if you go to the grocery store, in buildings, one thing that can affect the quality of a speed or the performance of a speed is if you're in a building that has a lot of metal, which is a lot of buildings, right? I mean, so if you think of some warehouse buildings, some office buildings, there's a lot of metal, steel or piping or other things that are structural components that are built into those buildings. And metal interferes with the ability of wireless networks to be able to let their signal. The signal typically bounces off metal. It can't go through metal very well. So I find that when I'm in my local Target store, I don't get cellular reception at all. But fortunately, they have a guest Wi-Fi for their guests. And so I have to remember to get onto the guest Wi-Fi network in order to be able to use that.
So brick is no problem, just metal?
Brick, usually not, depends on how thick it is, but usually, obviously wood, plaster, then masonry, and then metal. Metal is the worst. You may find, metal just to be very difficult to get. So as soon as you get into an elevator, that's why you will often lose your cellular signal, because it's a metal box. It's won't let radio waves in or out very easily. It's not designed to trap them. It's just that it's all metal, so it keeps everything pretty well closed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Carl.
I don't understand this thing about, so I'm in a hotel and I'm using the Wi-Fi in the hotel, right?
Yes.
So if there's a problem with the Wi-Fi in the hotel, I can get a hotspot through my cellular phone, but I'm gonna have to pay for that if I'm in another city.
If it is your personal hotspot, correct. Okay. If it's your personal hotspot,
Right.
it's on your data plan with your communication service.
That's my roaming. That's my roaming.
That's your roaming. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, the hotel I'm in Madrid, they're giving me their hotspot. They're paying the cellular fee for cellular data, and their hotspot gives me a Wi-Fi signal that I can connect my phone to. So I'm connecting my phone from Wi-Fi to their hotspot. Their hotspot goes to their cellular provider.
So why do they have a hotspot? Why can't they give you, why don't they have a router just to give you the Wi-Fi? I don't know. Why do they have
In
to go to
the,
a,
in the hotel, yes, they have a router.
This
But
is
if
for
I
walking
wanna-
around.
This is when I'm heading outside the hotel, I get to carry a little hotspot with me. It's a little phone-sized
oh my
device.
God.
And that way I've got Wi-Fi with me everywhere I go.
I didn't know it's a mobile
That's
hotspot.
what I
Okay,
meant.
now
Yeah,
it makes
well,
sense.
we know, some people like Fred are so sophisticated travelers that,
It's way ahead of me, Fred, this Fred guy.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's another way to get it now. So
I mean,
that's one of the
this
things.
also brings up, just so, well, to confuse things more, you can use, especially if you have an unlimited data plan, you can use your phone as a hotspot for another device, like your iPad, for instance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that if you have say a laptop, my laptop, for example, does not have a cellular antenna built into it. It does have a Wi-Fi antenna. So if I'm able to connect to a Wi-Fi network, I can get on the internet with my laptop. But if I'm somewhere where I don't have a Wi-Fi network and I have a cellular connection, I can use the hotspot function in my smartphone to create a Wi-Fi connection that I can connect to from my laptop. So I go from my laptop to my smartphone to the internet by using my cellular data. Now in the US, there's no roaming fee, but as soon as I'm overseas, there is a higher data fee for roaming.
Now, Bob, when will they give you a device, a plug-in to your iPad that gives you an antenna to the cellular, to the towers? Will they give you a plug-in?
Not
You
a
think?
plug-in. You have to buy, you have a choice of when you bought your iPad.
Yeah, I know, but I was wondering if there's a plug-in to the
No,
that port to the
no, there's no plug-in. You can get a hotspot. Now, I think there are USB sticks for laptops, but that give you cellular, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything, but maybe somebody else knows. I haven't seen one. But that's another way to get out to the internet, for working with. Now, the great thing about it is that just like a lot of other technologies, networks have become much more reliable and dependable and easier for people to use, so that we tend to have fewer and fewer problems these days with them. And so just like we want to turn on the TV and get a channel, I don't know if you remember the days when you'd turn on the TV and you'd have to bang it, to make things work better. And sometimes you'd have to tune in the channel. It was not a solid connection. It was a variable dial to get the,
You had tubes. You
tuned
had
in.
tubes.
Yeah. And so that was analog, type of technology. We rely on digital technology, but just like everything got improved, you turn on your TV and you expect to see the show you want to watch. Just like when you sit down at your computer, you expect to get on the internet and be able to watch it the way you want to also. And just sometimes speed affects you. Just a comfort level knowing that you're getting the speed you want to get and where you want to get it. Okay. Well, in about half an hour, we're going to do another tech quest. It's kind of a informal one where I'm going to show you. I don't know how long it's going to be because I'm going to show you so quickly how to make a movie on your iPhone or iPad from photos but you probably never tried it, or maybe some of you out. Fred's probably tried it because he's a videographer, but a lot of you may not have tried it. It's just something that's really easy to do, and actually showing people a video of your photos is sometimes a lot more entertaining than just showing them the photos by themselves. Because I think I've got 8,000 photos on my iPhone, and I don't show them to people. But people like watching videos, and there are some things in iMovie that's a free app that comes with Apple that gives you the ability to do it. So I've got my iPad charging up, so we can use the iPad or we can do it with the iPhone. I'll do it with both and show you how easy it is to do. So we'll do that in about half an hour.
Okay, see you then.
Okay. I'll see. Thanks, everybody. Any questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks.